I think a pretty key one, and we've seen this before with clients, we've seen it even like with our own things, misalignment with business goals.
Yep. Got to define the goal.
Yep. And quite often people go in, and I think agencies are very guilty of going in and setting some KPIs that are just based on, I don't know, platform averages or what they've seen before with the clients, and it doesn't actually relate to what that business is looking for.
Yeah, I think it's about making sure that everybody that's involved has got the same goal as well. Mm-hmm. Having a CFO looking at sales and then having a CMO looking at impressions is going to cause conflict.
Yes, 100%. Another one, data-driven strategy versus gut instinct. We've talked about this before,
Yep.
how you kind of do need a balance of the two. But I think quite often, I mean, we've seen it before, and we'll always see a lot of strategy driven by instinct and gut, and forgetting to look at the data behind it until the very end. So people are really good at going in and looking at results and be like, oh, this is what we got off the back of it, but failing to actually drive the campaign or drive the strategy based on that as it goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot to unpick. I think...
What do you think the balance is? Where do you think the balance should lie?
It depends on the type of campaign, I think. But I think creative, you need more gut.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're talking about data, obviously, data's all well and good, isn't it? Third-party data, first-party data, going into a campaign, doing some analysis, trying to make assumptions based on the data that you've got available to you. But you never know. There's no certainty.
No. But I think that's why you have to look at it as you go, rather than just getting to the end and be like, right, let's pull the results now. Because the things where it can go wrong is if your data's suddenly taking a big hit, that's a real clear indicator that something's not quite lining up, and you might need to rethink that strategy.
I think that's about setting expectations, isn't it, around KPIs. I look at a good example would be the Snoop Dogg Solo Stove campaign. So obviously the expectations from the business, from what I've read, slightly differed to the outcome based on the fact that the CFO was publicly very disappointed that it didn't impact sales in the way that they expected. However, everyone in the world
Now
saw
knows that brand,
or knew. So I would look at that as a marketer and think that's a fucking well executed campaign that delivered, I would guess, what they set out to deliver, but someone in the business had different expectations.
But if we were running that campaign, how might we have changed that? So we saw it go in, we saw it went viral. We saw, this big hitting video, great brand awareness piece, and we saw that it wasn't driving any sales.
The one thing that I would say that I would change as a fundamental would be the timing. For me, doing a campaign of that scale in summer for a stove is bad. You would have thought that approaching peak colder weather, when someone is perhaps going to be a bit more in market and a bit warmer to the product, would have made a bit more sense.
I thought it wasn't an outdoor stove.
Yeah.
Oh, it was, yeah.
But it was like peak summer.
Yeah.
So that, for me, was something that I looked at and I was like, But there was clearly a lack of expectation setting with the client. And I think someone on the creative side will have either not been strong enough or not had the support to put that across the table and say, look, this is not about sales. This is not a sales-led campaign. This is not a direct response campaign. This is a brand awareness campaign. So you need to just temper your expectations, because we're not saying that this isn't going to drive sales. What we're saying is to measure sales from a brand campaign is going to take a lot longer.
Mm-hmm. And these are the next steps. that you would do following this. Yeah.
And I don't know whether they have. No one knows other than the agency themselves. And look, I'm on the agency side. I thought it was a great campaign. But perhaps that was something that was missing in terms of expectations. And there were a lot of upset about it, and there was a lot of critique about it. And I think the CEO got sacked off the back of it.
Oh, heck.
Yeah, because it will have been a heavy investment.
Oh,
I mean, Snoop
huge.
cheap, so.
Okay, another one. This can be quite a painful one. It can be quite a hard one to work with, but it's common. Shifting priorities to sort of mid-campaign, and clients are moving goalposts, moving expectations, kind of coming in with, oh, actually, no, we need to do this or whatever. And it can be wildly different to where that campaign started or the original KPIs or whatever else. How do you deal with that? And how do you, I guess, foreshadow that maybe?
I think one of the overarching themes for this whole conversation is communication. I think you've got to communicate the why incrementally. So when you're pivoting, why are you pivoting? What's your expected outcome of that pivot? And you need to do that from day one. Why have you concepted this campaign? What do we think it's going to drive? Why have we gone with this approach? Okay, sounds good. Why is it performing like this?
Yep.
Is it meeting expectations? No. All right, maybe we should do this. All right, why are we going to do that?
Yep.
This is why we're going to pivot to do this.
But also within that, understanding like what's going on in the business.
Yeah, totally.
Like within those questions, not just why in the campaign, but what's going on in the business. So you might be like, right, we can see that they're focusing on this elsewhere in the business. Let's get that into our heads and think maybe our campaign might be pushed down that direction as well, because we can see that happen elsewhere, or we know they've not done as well in this area, so that might come into our remit.
Yep, total. Makes sense. It needs to be both ways. You've got to have communication from internal marketing teams to the other way, especially when you're looking at calendars and aligning activity. It's no good having a product launch mid-campaign that's focusing on something completely different, because you're going to split your interest.
Yep.
So having cohesion between internal teams and external agencies is mega.
Yep. Okay, external disruptions.
Yeah,
this is a massive one.
This is huge, yeah. But
this could be a whole episode in itself.
But it's also such an under-the-radar thing. I think there's not enough conversation around market conditions. There's not enough conversation around external factors, like micro-external factors.
Yeah.
It has such an impact, and then it almost feels like I've been in situations before where there's been an impact, like public impact, and it's felt like an excuse for performance not being where it needs to be.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that, and definitely been in situations where I've seen that happen.
But that's the reality, and I think now that intelligence platforms are getting a little bit better, and agencies are starting to do a better job of talking about things like that up front as a campaign consideration, I think that is becoming part of campaign discussions.
Yep.
And it's becoming part of performance reporting. And zooming out even more, whilst you need to consider it and whilst it's important, it goes back to the approach of, if you're doing brand work, it's a longer cycle.
Yep.
So whilst there might be a market condition in place, what generally happens with the market condition is that it will pass. It might get worse, it might get better, but it will pass. So if you're approaching your marketing in the right way, market conditions are something to be aware of. However, shouldn't knock you completely off course.
Yeah, agreed. And they're things that you can have absolutely no idea they're coming, but also there's the external factors, and there's also things like algorithms. Like, how many times have we seen things and actually been in a situation where we know how much, say, like a Google core update affects what we might have been working on or what we might have planned.
Yeah.
And they're things that you don't really know when they're coming. You don't know what's going to be in it. And it's something clients might not even be aware of.
But that's where the value of an agency becomes exponential because all the variables and all the moving parts and all the things and all the changes, algorithms, content formats, AI, all this stuff that is potentially disruptive is where you should be getting the value out of your agency, because an agency that's on top of developments will take a view of it objectively, understand it based on experience, and then interpret how to leverage or capitalise on it or respond to it in a constructive way. Whereas I think a lack of understanding or education within in-house teams in some circumstances, because there are in-house teams that are on it, but where they're not, there's a knee-jerk effect to stuff like that, and that is more damaging in the short term, knee-jerking and trying to like pivot everything in response, than assessing and then making a structured change to respond.
So I think this leads quite nicely on to sort of the next thing that I wanted to go through, which is how to identify the problems and help mitigate them in future. So I think the first step is looking at why things went wrong and where they went wrong, and sort of diagnosing that and figuring out your learnings off the back of that. So easy ones are performance. So looking at that, are we measuring the right things? What does that performance indicate? Where are the dips? Where are the successes? What can we learn off the back of it? Messaging is one that's often people forget to look about until the very end. And actually aligning it with target audience as well. And even if that target audience looks like it's changing slightly, you can analyse your audiences as you go in and see how that's looking and pivot it more towards where you want it to sit. And people are not that good at doing that sometimes. Channels.
Yeah, and that's where strategy comes in as well, because obviously marketing singing to the right tune for the platform is key.
100%. And external factors, like we've said before, looking at actually what throughout the campaign, if you've had these external factors, looking at how you can learn from that, so that in future, if that was to happen again, you've actually got learnings from the previous campaign to apply as a bit of a crisis management tool or similar.
I think it comes down to measurement. What are you measuring? How are you measuring it? And also, fundamentally, marketing is designed to increase revenue, be that sales, direct sales, or leads. With the amount of diversity in a user's journey, it's getting, in some ways it's getting more difficult, but in some ways it's getting easier from an attribution standpoint. We're in a bit of a tricky point with attribution at the moment, but you can confidently determine correlations between bottom line revenue off the back of campaign activity, marketing activity. So as long as you're clear on that, and there's a line in the sand that the client and the agency are both aligned on, you can see whether what is happening is working or not.
How do you think, from an agency point of view, the best way to communicate that with the client is? Obviously, like, we've got like communication, feedback, regular check-ins. But what else would you put in place to make sure that's transparent, not just at the end, but like throughout?
You need to agree on metrics that sit at a holistic level. So things like share a search, for example, is one that we use because it's a really nice benchmark for revenue growth, and we know that we can correlate it to things that we're doing. And then off the back of it, we've got the granularity as well. It's just, we don't need to be in the weeds unless the client wants us to be. We still track it, we still report it, but as long as you've got a a key metric that you can agree on, which is a really good barometer for performance, it's easy for them to interpret. It's easy for you to show key dates, key performance. Then everything else is inquisitive and strategy-led interrogation, which helps the campaigns. So I think getting above the micro is probably how I would summarise it. But you've got to have that conversation with the client.
Yep. What do you do when the client just doesn't get it?
I mean, it happens.
It does happen. And I'm sure you've probably got a story or something to go with it. But, that situation of just a very unhappy client. And as much as you try to turn it round, as much as you try to improve, as much as you try to learn from whatever else, they're not seeing your side of it. They're just seeing the black and white of we've put money in and we've not got what we expected.
Yep. So my approach to that is do everything that you possibly can so that you know confidently that if the outcome of that relationship is that you walk away, you can reconcile it.
Mm-hmm.
Trust in what you've delivered. If a client is unhappy because of poor service, that's different.
Yep.
But if you've bent over backwards, you've done everything that you can think of, the strategy has had everything thrown at it, and the client is still of the mindset that it's not working or performance isn't where it needs to be, it's probably a client problem. Yep. Therefore, as commercially difficult as that might be, you're probably going to be better for it if you just terminate that relationship.
What's the best one you can think of? Like a campaign or a strategy that you've been part of where you've seen it take this big, dip, or it's gone slightly off course or whatever else, but actually you managed to turn it around, change the goalposts if they need changing, realign things, and actually seen big success at the end of it?
I mean, penalties are always difficult. Clients that have been penalised,
mm-hmm.
having a conversation about what that is when a client is in panic mode because they've had
everything's paused and
lots of traffic and lots of revenue literally drop off overnight.
Yep.
So the client is in panic mode anyway, and then trying to constructively explain what it is, why it's happened, what we can do about it, but then following that with, we think it'll take this long to fix, but we can't guarantee that that's going to be the case. I've had quite a lot of those conversations.
How have they gone?
Varies, but once the panic wears off and the attention shifts to proactively reversing what's in play, largely the client has knuckled under and tried to get it back. Not always, but yeah, largely I would say, obviously you haven't really got any other option at that point.
No. Have you had much experience of witnessing or hearing stories of those agencies where they just won't take the blame? It's something else's fault.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've worked for agencies.
Yeah, you might have.
Yeah. And that's sort of shifted with Google's approach to how they acknowledge algorithm updates, and like they never used to publicly come out and say we've done an algorithm update. And I think what happened there is they would never really confirm it until ages after, and sometimes they didn't even do that. So an agency facing massive drops in performance, being in a position where they have to explain something that they can't have any confirmation from anyone,
guessing at.
it was like, oh shit. But Yeah, that's shifted slightly, but I've worked in agencies where blames have been shifted or tried to be brushed under the carpet in some way.
As a business leader, what would you say like the red flags that you could instantly see that something's not gonna go the way that we're expecting?
From a client perspective?
Any perspective.
Any perspective?
Well, it could be, like sort of internal marketing, client perspective, whatever. Where would you immediately go, right, no, that's not going to work? Or that's not going to bounce back?
Stubborn difference of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're setting out and there's friction.
Yep.
It's never going to be straightforward or easy. Lack of understanding is always a bad one. I guess that ties into the friction, though.
Should a strategy always have a backup plan?
I'm not really a big believer in a backup plan. I think you go with plan A because plan A is the most effective use of budget and time. But you optimize as you go. Mm-hmm. It'd be ignorant.
So by the end it might be a million miles away from plan A. But
it could be, yeah, but it'd be ignorant to ignore what the data's telling you and what the campaign is telling you. But yeah, I wouldn't have a plan B. I wouldn't have this is what we're going to do, but if that don't work, we're going to do this. I would have, this is what we're going to do because we think this is the best for the outcome. However, that doesn't mean that things might change mid-campaign.
Do you think that would be a red flag if an agency was presenting you like, we're going to do this, but if this is where we're going to do this, and if this is where we're going to do this?
I mean, in my mind, yes, because it's a lack of confidence in the service that they're delivering. But there are a lot of nuances across platforms, certainly in digital. It's like you can let the pace of change get in your way a little bit, I think.
Yep.
But yeah, I would prefer my agency to confidently propose, this is what we're going to do, here's why, here's what we're expecting. Rather than, we've done this is campaign A, but this is campaign B if we don't hit the mark. And it goes back to what I was saying about long-term strategy. You've got to think long-term. It's not going to be just that one thing. It's going to be something that you work on for a long time, probably years, to get to a point where you confidently understand community, audience, how the model works, the infrastructure behind the business that you're working with, their response, how quick do they come back, how quick can they execute what they need to do if they've got a lead coming in, are they speaking to them within an hour? There's a lot of variables and a lot of improvements that can be made.
Draw some quick fire questions.
Yeah.
I've moved away from this or that to just quick fire questions.
I like this or that. But
I know, I felt like I was just getting a bit of a hole sometimes and they were really hard to think of with some categories.
Yeah.
So, client's website traffic is up, but conversions are down. What do? Quick answer.
Look at it.
Look at data, yeah.
Well, yeah, you just check it out, wouldn't you? If it's significant enough to have flagged, then there's something wrong somewhere. So yeah, investigate it, fix it fast.
Test it,
yeah.
Do you know what a lot of people would do?
Ignore it.
Oh, should we just redesign it?
It's mid-campaign.
Should we just do a redesign?
Yeah.
Rebrand, yeah.
I mean, if it's a significant drop, but there'll be a factor.
Yep.
There'll be a cause.
Client wants more social engagement, but doesn't want to change content strategy.
We can't have one without the other.
No.
If you're not happy with your engagement as it stands, then you're not doing enough, or you're not doing something that is working, so you need to improve.
Competitor just launched a big all singing, all dancing campaign. Carry on with your strategy or react to it?
Depends what your focus is, doesn't it? If your skew is performance marketing, you're going to have to respond at you, otherwise you're going to lose share. If your skew is, or if your split is brand and performance, you could take some of the weight off with performance, but have comfort knowing that you've got a strong enough brand
Yep.
to absorb that campaign. And it'd have to be, like, if you've got a half decent brand, it'd have to be a fucking big campaign, wouldn't it, from a competitor
to really shake you up.
shake it.
Yeah. The client insists on a strategy that the data says won't work. What do you do?
Discuss it. If there's a genuine, forceful, confident reason why they think it's going to work, then you've got to listen and you've got to try and understand it from their perspective. The client ultimately is always going to know the business better than you.
Yep.
So there may be a reason that you don't think of for them wanting to push that campaign. And it might be that the purpose of that is different to the KPIs that you're working towards. But it doesn't mean that there isn't value in it.
Yep. That's it.
Nice.
Good.
Good questions.
I made quite a lot of that up.
Did you?
I've got points, but then I was just asking you more about.
You do that on the fly?
Some of them, yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Relevant.
Yeah. Right, I told George I'd record him an introduction.
It's for like 11.
Yes, please. I already feel awkward about it. I'm hoping he doesn't want my face in it. As an agency, you pitch a killer marketing strategy, the client signs off, the campaign launches, and then it flops. What now? Clients expect results, and failure to adjust can quickly lead to lost trust. Clients expect results, and failure to adjust can quickly lead to lost trust. No marketing plan survives first contact with reality, and agencies need to be agile. In this episode, we're discussing everything that we've seen to make campaigns work for clients. In this episode, we're discussing failed marketing strategies and the steps agencies can take to ensure success. Subscribe to Resting Pitch Face for weekly agency insights. Share your biggest agency horror story in the comments. Share your biggest agency horror story in the comments below.